Okay, hello everyone. This is Dave Nielsen. We are getting ready to start our SV DevOps meetup. So I don't know if Charity remembers this, but I used to work over at Redis Labs, and and I remember we were at some, I think it was like a cloud expo or something. And Charity, you probably don't know this at all, but I remember you were giving this talk on databases and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things you were hammering on was how Redis was not that great at running at scale or something like that. I can't remember exactly the details, but it was really
Oh,
funny. It was really funny
oops.
because no, it was great because you know of course you can run at scale, but there's certain things you can do well. I'm sure, as you well know, and other things that it's not all that great at. Um, and I just remember like all of our marketing people getting all like, what's she saying? Oh my gosh, and marketing people don't really know the difference when you're talking about what one thing's really good at.
Love. It comes with love. Like you bang on shit because you love it. Like I I believe that the best my love language is like bug reports. So
Yeah. Oh no, that was great. I love that. I was having so much fun with that. So then, and then of course, I think later on we got you to speak at RedisConf or something. So anyway, I've enjoyed not just
yeah, I was
your
very impressed that you guys asked me to speak at your conference after I'd been like slamming you on social media for a couple
oh
of years.
no,
Well
that's the
done.
best. That was that was Lena and I. I don't know if you remember Lena, but she and I were like, who could we get that would kind of stir things up a bit? And so yeah, Lena is product marketing person. Very impressive that she take on that challenge and invite you. And I thought it was a fun talk. So glad to have you back and learn a little bit more about what you're doing now at Honeycomb.
Well, I've got about 5 slides here, so uh, this is don't think of this so much as a presentation as an extended rant with a little bit of visual um, content. Let's see if I can see all of your comments too. Here we are. Hi. In case you're wondering, yes, this is my dresser. Yes, that is my closet. I am sitting underneath my bed because it's San Francisco. And this is our real estate situation.
Yeah, nice.
So, okay. Continuous delivery. My rant here today is about the fact that we talk about CI/CD all the fucking time, but we don't do it. If you don't know who I am, Charity Majors, Honeycomb is my company. I wrote the database reliability engineering book. Liz Fong Jones and I are writing a book on observability engineering, which should be out sometime this year. You can get the pre-order copies. I don't know what animals put me on the cover yet. They don't let us choose, which I think is really unfortunate and unfair. Side rant. Do you do CI/CD? Loft beds are fun. How many of you guys do CI/CD? What do you mean by that? So most people will say yes. When you start probing that, most people are doing CI. Most people are automatically running tests after they commit, diffs to master. But most people are not doing what I would call CD, which is then automatically deploying those artifacts to production without any human interference. And I think it's a little unfortunate we've kind of stopped. We talk about CI/CD all the time, like conferences, we do CI/CD, blog posts, CI/CD. But you dig into it, most people are doing CI. Most people are not doing CD. And CI was only ever really supposed to be the prelude to CD, because continuous delivery is the thing that will actually change your life. It will save your ass. It will change your life. It will revolutionize the way that you do development. It is at the top of the waterfall. If you get CD wrong, it's almost impossible to recover from that. If you get CD right, it has a way of. If you get CD wrong, you pathologies bloom all across your organization. If you get it right, it's not the entire story, but it is a big part of the story. Where is my slide selector gone? It's not advancing. There we go. If you lack CI/CD, Jesus, I wonder what is wrong with my slides. Okay, I just have to hit it like 5 times. No big. Lacking CI/CD is like, it's well, the goal of CI/CD, right, is to reduce the lead time between when you write the code and when the code is live in production. And ideally that would be like 15 minutes or less, right? So that you like maybe got time for a bathroom break or grab some coffee, but you don't have time to page all that context out of your head and like pick up another project. Because and it's almost as important that it is predictable as it is automatic, because you need it to be kind of like muscle memory. You need your body to remember the feeling of, I merged to master or main, and within a short enough interval, I go look at it, right? So while you're writing your code, you're instrumenting it with an eye to future you, like 15 minutes from now, how is future me going to understand whether this thing that I'm working on is right or not? So you instrument it, commit it, get some coffee, and then you look at it and you ask yourself those questions. Did it do what I meant it to do? Is it working as intended? And does anything else look weird? And that last question sounds a little fuzzy, but it is irreducible, right? It is an irreducible complexity, because weird could be anything, and your gut will be trained over time. You'll get a feeling for what is weird and what isn't weird, but it's important that not be automated, right? Because that last step of, is it weird, is all about the unknown unknowns. Now, if you get that time elapsed between writing and shipping your code, I call it like the petri dish. It's where your software ages, and software before it's been shipped to production does not age like fine wine. Software before production ages like milk. Like, if you get that element wrong, you get longer lead times, which leads to larger diffs and slower code reviews, which leads to anyone reviewing or revising these nightmare diffs needs to pause, swap all the full context of your project in and their project out anytime they switch gears between writing code to reviewing and backing again. And as this loop switches to be longer and longer, people spend more and more time like waiting on each other to review, to comment, to revise, to deploy, make requested changes, and more time just paging stay out of your heads. Like this is the limiting factor right here, right? How much can you keep in your head? People start swapping that in a few times a day, and then it starts to really snowball, and it gets worse because most deploys at most places are run by hand. You have to trigger it manually to get your code out. Maybe there are even some kill me now, but like human checks between you and shipping your code, and this leads to inevitably changes get batched, and that's when you've really lost the plot. Because a really key part of a healthy software digestive system is it's based on the premise that engineers should own their code, right? Own your diffs from beginning to end, and you need to be able to, so when you're shipping something out to prod that has 30 people's diffs batched together, you've got no clear line of ownership, right? Either you interrupt 30 people's day to watch this go out, and then the rest of the day is they all like argue over who, or try to figure out, do get bisect, try to figure out whose problem it was, or you ship it cleanly. One person, one diff, one deploy. You can own that shit. Your job is not done as an engineer until you watch your users use your code in production, because code on its own is just data structures and algorithms. Doesn't mean shit, right? Doesn't mean shit until your users are using it. And production changes daily. It's not real until your code is live. So once you get to a place where like deployments aren't happening automatically, they're being manually triggered, then they're being, batched up, and this is why, like, you could no longer practice observability driven development. You could no longer really practice software ownership, and this is why it's so incredibly costly. Now, I've done some back of the envelope estimations to try and figure out just how costly it is. And I have no math to back this up. All I have is my experience and the experience of about a dozen other people that I've checked with so far. But it holds pretty roughly true. say that you have, N X engineers, or the number it takes to write, ship, deploy, and maintain, this software, assuming it goes out in 15 minutes or less. Okay. If it goes out in hours, you need twice as many engineers. If it goes out in days, you need to double it again. Weeks, double it again. Months, I don't know if you I don't actually have experience with deploy times that long, but my guess is it'll pretty much hold true, because this is not like a linear thing. This is exponential. This is a feedback system that loops back into itself. And when your code is going out like immediately, you can have that tight feedback loop of, I built it, I watch it, I make sure it's going okay, and I move on. But as it gets to be longer, these pathologies bloom, right? Now you need people dedicated to being SREs because you have so many more outages. Now you need people dedicated to build engineering because it's so long and leaky. Now you need more, teams. If you need teams that specialize in smaller amounts of the stack because, you can't have coverage over it all. Now you need more engineering managers. Now you need more product people. Now you need more it just never ends. For example, Honeycomb, for the past 2 years, we've had 8 people writing code. 8 people write everything from our storage engine, query planner, application, the user experience, user interface, doing all the SRE stuff, doing all the security stuff, including our secure tenancy product, which is like dedicated, super secure shit, and all of the on-call. 8 people, right? Now, we would prefer to have had more people. We couldn't until we raised money. But the point is, if you do the math, and our code always goes out within 15 minutes. It's a cron job. It's a bash script that I personally wrote. I'm very proud of it. It's been in production for 4.5 years. If it took us weeks to ship, we would have needed on the order of 60 to 80 engineers. Which feels right in my experience. The fact that we have not just like hired the best engineers we've ever worked at. We were very intentional from the beginning about getting, bootcamp grads and, intermediate engineers and growing them, junior engineers. But that cycle that it kickstarted is so powerful. I have a slide in one of my other decks. It's like, which one of these teams would you rather join? On the DORA, the 4 DORA report metrics, which are how long does it take you to ship your code, how often you ship your code, what is the time to recovery of alerts, and how often are there outages. And if you join a team that ships in 15 minutes or less every time, you'll have something like 2,000 deploys, 3,000 deploys over the course of a year. If you join a team that ships like every month or 2, you've got like 12. And how much more quickly are you going to learn from the first system versus the second system? How much more quickly are you going to move? And people start thinking like that this is a risky. They're like, I don't think my team can handle that. This sounds really scary. We don't have the best engineers in the world. This is just for Google and Facebook. And that's number one, it's fucking bullshit. Google and Facebook do not have the best engineers in the world. They have some of them. They also have some shit ones, just like everyone else. The way that you're doing it now is the hard way. It is so much easier to write and ship code in this fast feedback loop. What makes software difficult, what makes us draw Dilbert cartoons, is that elongation, is all of the bullshit that gets added in there, all of that time for it to be flaky and fail, for you to forget, to lose the context, to have to like relearn it from scratch. What was I trying to do 2 or 3 months ago? If you have that feedback loop type, if you're watching as your code goes out, I swear to God that 80% of all bugs get caught by the engineer who just wrote the code, watching it in production as users using it, because you know what you meant to do. You watch them do it, you find the bugs there. And if you didn't find them there, guess what? Someone's going to find them months down the line, perhaps. Probably it will be found by your users. And probably it's going to be much harder to repro, to figure out, get there. It'll be someone else who's debugging it, almost certainly. It won't be you. It'll be someone else dealing with your shitty code going, what were they thinking, right? When you knew what you were thinking. Maybe you could have found it right back at the source. CI/CD is the easy way. And I don't actually hold engineers primarily responsible for this. I think this is a massive, catastrophic failure on the part of engineering leadership over the past 5 years, 5 to 10 years. But I don't let engineers off the hook completely. If you count yourselves as leaders, and I think that you should, you can just do this. You have the power. It is in your hands. Nobody but you can do this. Nobody, you can fix this. Now, if you're an engineering leader, I would have a different rant / scold for you, depending where you sit in the org chart, etc. I hear somebody here saying VP of Eng usually prevents CD. I have a couple of responses to that. How long has it been since that VP of Eng wrote code? Because maybe it's been a little too long. I get that this is counterintuitive. When you're selling it up the chain to your leaders, the farther you get away from actually writing code, the more counterintuitive it becomes. And I get that somebody who's never worked in technology, maybe your CEO, whatever, this sounds really scary. Ship things immediately? And you know why? It's because our human response to fear and uncertainty is to slow down. It's to go, we seize up, right? We slow down, we seize up, we add more process, we add more, but we have data that shows us that this is wrong, right? We have 15 fucking years of data that shows us that this is wrong. So this needs to become a triumph of data over intuition, because yes, in the short term, it might get more breaky. Yes, in the short term, it will cause problems. Anytime that you're taking a stable-ish system and changing the way that the system is comprised, yeah, you're introducing some risk and some wobbles into it. But over the long term, and by long term, I mean 6 to 12 months, the gains are incredible, right? Not only in terms of, yes, you'll be able to ship value to your users more quickly, more reliably, but you're going to retain and hire better engineers who embrace change, engineers who embrace ownership, engineers who want to be held accountable for how their code works. Anybody who doesn't want CI/CD is not someone you want on your team. And I think that teams who aren't doing CI/CD right now are burning out and losing the best engineers that they have, because they know that this is not the right way to work. Like, I feel like if you wanted, like, engineers by and large know this by now. I think if you went out and tried to find me 10 engineers who weren't convinced that they should be doing CI/CD, I think you'd have a hard problem. And I think that if you tried to find me 10 teams that were doing CI/CD, you would also have sorry, I'm just thumping my keyboard for emphasis. You would also have a hard problem. And this to me speaks to the gulf between what we know we need to be doing and what we are doing. And that gulf right there, bridging that, if you're an engineering leader, that's your one fucking job. That is your one job. That is your one job, is to make sure that your team is spending their time based on doing the most high impact work that they could actually be spending it on. Will be some of those data points. Read Accelerate. There's a whole book full of data points in that book. Right? Like read the Dora reports and read Accelerate by Jez Humble and Nicole, whatever her name is. All the data is right there. And also, like, if you're an engineer, especially if you're a senior engineer working on this stuff, don't wait to be given permission. Don't wait to be told this is okay. Do it. You have the power. Find the way. Start small, but do it. Do it behind their backs if you must, because we aren't just dealing with our customer satisfaction. We are dealing with us, our mental health, our love for our jobs, our we get worn down not by shipping lots of code. We get worn down by not shipping. We get worn down by the friction for getting this shit out to production. We get worn down by not being allowed to do our best work. And CI/CD is a huge part of the solution there. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention observability. Continuous delivery and observability go hand in hand. If you have one, you desperately want the other. A lot of people don't need observability because they have these really long lead times and nothing really happens that fast. So they're just kind of like, fine, what do I need with real time? But the more the shit speeds up, and it doesn't speed up in a bad way, it speeds up in an interesting way. It speeds up in a, oh, I can get answers to my questions kind of way. Oh, I can understand this. Oh, I don't just have to sit back and formulate elaborate guesses and hypotheses. I can ask my data and find the answer, right? Faster. When it comes to software, Speed is safety. Speed is better. Speed is safety. Slowness is what you need to be afraid of. And when it comes to software delivery pipe, like deploy chain, speed is a killer. And finally, if you can't get your leaders to do this, if you do this yourself and get scolded, fucking leave your job. There are plenty of places that will welcome you. And I really feel like we as engineers, our power is that we do things. Our power is what we build, right? Our power is in our hands to be makers, to be creators. I believe that engineers are artists. We are creative people, creative thinkers, and they can't do shit without us. Our power is in our, if every worker at Google sat down and refused to work, well, they just unionized. So I guess you can see what happens, right? Like, we have so much more power than we give ourselves credit for. And I really feel like we need to stop rewarding people who don't take that seriously. Teams, execs that feel like only supporting the customer is what's important. And when it needs to be both things, right? Customer happiness and engineering happiness. The happiness of your creators as well as the happiness of your consumers. They're equally important. And in the long term, I don't think you can only prioritize one. I think that they build on each other, they inform each other, they support each other. And so it's time for us to fucking stop burning people out and running them out of the industry. Don't give your labor to people who are not worthy of it. If you work at a great team that you don't want to leave, strike out, find a better one, and then send for them. Bring them with you. This happens all the time. How will you do better in 2021? Questions?
Okay, great. Thanks, Charity. Yeah, we do got at least one question here, and I think we'll probably get some more. So folks, feel free to use the chat to ask your questions. We've got a question here from Arun. He says, it would be great if you could share some more data points.
Yeah, I just answered that. I said,
okay, yeah.
Read the Accelerate book and the Dora reports.
Yeah. And that's DevOps. What is a Dora? DevOps
research report.
Yeah. Was that like, yeah. Nicole, yeah, I've seen her give a lot of talk. She definitely puts a lot of data in her reports.
They wrote a whole book.
Yeah, there you go. Good, thanks. And now, just to follow up, so I remember early days of the CI/CD conversation where folks would talk about that thrashing. I think you mentioned thrashing, like, where you're working on something and all of a sudden you get pulled back in to troubleshoot what's been deployed, and that took a month to deploy or something like that. Yeah. What kind of data points do you think people can look for there? Because that seems to me to be the most practical, obvious, time-consuming, impact on the engineers. I don't know if there's any data points for that really, but where you get sucked over to out of your project. And now,
yeah, I mean, we all have like experiences of this, and I think the great gift that Jez and Nicole gave to the world was bringing a lot of this stuff together and aggregating it, making actual data out of it and Accelerate. But like, we've all been on these projects. We all know how painful it is and how much time wasting it is. And yeah, I did not actually take the time to like pull any of those out. This is a purely emotional, just like rant. But all the data is there. I didn't make it up. Read the books. And make arguments to your execs, because the data is there and it is compelling, and if they give a shit about their people, they should care about it. Do you see the advent and popularity of GitOps and SRE shifts as a failure of the DevOps paradigm? No, I just see it as like a success. It's a marker of success. DevOps succeeded. It's the nature of late-term capitalism, dude. Sorry, there's always got to be a new best thing for marketing people to hang their hooks on for. I think that DevOps is phenomenally successful, and that means that it inevitably is going to, everything waxes and wanes. There's the things that DevOps did well were a gift to the world, and now the world is like, give us more gifts. Well, SRE is giving us gifts now. I do think that it is a sign of maturation of certain arguments. I think that it's a sign that we're seeing even further development in the like I feel like the first pendulum swing of DevOps is all about ops people, you must learn to write code. We're like, okay, write code, and then it was like, okay, software engineers, like your turn, right? And that's where I see, like, that's kind of synonymous with the SRE shift for me. It's like, okay, it's not actually enough to just like make ops people devs. Now we have to make dev people ops too. So that's how I see it.
And I know you're focused primarily on SaaS, deploying to SaaS. Do you think there's much of a change or difference when you're talking about software?
Be more specific, software.
Well, SaaS, you're deploying to a live environment, and you've got users, right? So that's going back to your point where it's not done until you see your users using it. With software, it's a little more difficult because you're deploying something, but there's not necessarily a user there. Like software that you might run as a server or somebody. So
yeah, so definitely if you have like 24/7 high availability, I think of those as not different, but they're like on the edge, right? They're kind of on the leading edge of software in many ways. From what I understand, like I've been talking to, some folks in robotics and some folks like very highly regulated environments and some folks in like software environments. It's not different, and in fact, it's different, but they succeed insofar as they can make strides towards being like CD, right? So they'll continuously deploy to an internal environment where where people are like running robots internally or whatever. But like the rhythm of getting your code out as quickly as possible so that you can sweep it off your mental plate, right, it's just as important. So it's kind of like you need to look for, you need to modify it to fit your local environment, but the core, the gains that you get are still the same, and it's kind of like you still want that to be the objective. You just have to modify it to suit your use case, but you still want your engineers to be experiencing the same sort of cadence.
Yeah, the engineer seems like it would still get the benefit. You just, you don't have to worry about 100% uptime because it's software that's not being run right now. But the engineers would clearly still get that benefit, not have that thrashing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. All right, folks, you guys, you have any other questions? Let's get them in here. I was wondering if you had any, tying this into observability. Do you see the two sort of going hand in hand sometimes?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not ranting about this just, to save the world. I also want more customers. And what I realized this last year was that we have kind of an implicit dependency on people doing continuous delivery, because not continuous, but like, we need people. Our customers are people who have pretty short lead times, because when you have a short lead time, you're much more in the real time, frame of mind. And I was like, there is this interesting, I think, and real coupling between how well Honeycomb will do is tied to how much of the world gets better at shipping software over the next few years. So I'm all about just like helping people like get better at shipping software, because I think it creates more customers for Honeycomb. And like a lot of our value proposition has always just been, closing that loop, making it so that you're in a constant conversation with your code. Removing the translator, right? Like, I think for a long time, like ops has been like the translation layer that's just between monitoring and software engineers. Just like, you wrote this code, it means that these happen to the IRQ metrics or some low-level system thing, right? And like ops is just like a translator, and that's not scalable. That doesn't tie you to the outcome of your work. It's what is it they say that we want from our jobs? It's autonomy, mastery, and meaning. And there are so many ways in which software has just been sheltered from some of the things that actually make our work meaningful to us. And my hope is to like connect some of those dots. But all of these are like, and it's not just these movements. I think there's this massive shift right now underway from so much energy and money and time and thought going to pre-production, and kind of starving production systems. And I think over the last 5 years, we've seen the startups kind of springing up and like conversation kind of changing, where it's shifting, right, to spending a lot more time focusing on production. And like I'm including like Gremlin in that and Launch Darkly in that, like all the feature flag movement, continuous progressive delivery. And I think this is a really good and healthy shift. It's also, of course, blending dev and ops way more than ever before. So maybe you could say that DevOps has graduated, right? DevOps is no longer necessary. If we're all DevOps now, then what's next, But yeah, I think it's a really healthy shift. I think that it's good for users. I think it's good for engineers. And I think it's good for businesses.
And kind of off the primary topic, but related, we have the conversation around microservices and, how versus monolith. And I don't know, I've heard all these people come up with these different terms with megalith, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I'm curious as to like what you see out there when you're dealing with your customers or just in general, are you seeing any change from the microservices model where, you got a team and they have maybe a couple services that they're managing, the whole pizza thing. And then I'm now seeing kind of a pull back a little bit, maybe to not have quite so many services, maybe try to be a little more monolithy, or at least, not jump so quickly into having so many different services.
Well, the costs of running all those services became more and more evident. So I think it's just sort of like a healthy, just, they're finding the middle of the road. It happens with every technology. You go all in and then you realize that's a bit far, and then you kind of find your way back. I mean,
yeah.
It's and this is why, I think that software is a creative industry, because there's no right answer. If this was an engineering discipline, there would be a right answer. We could find it using our protractor and our pencil, right? And it's not. What matters as much is the people who are working on these services, what their backgrounds are, what they're comfortable with, how they interact with each other, the history of the org, its embeddedness in, time and space, which I think is why it's so fun and interesting.
Okay, folks, feel free to ask any questions if you have them. I have one more,
Anything
which is I've been following different. I try to follow different trends, of course. We all do. One that I keep coming back to is the Jamstack. Because what they've done, which seems, I feel like this could actually become like an enterprisey thing, because what they've done is they've separated out the front end from the back end in a very nice, clean way, where they kind of deploy as much as you can as static, and then so that when you're downloading your application, most of it's coming down static. And of course, you might use React or some other front end framework for that as well. And then you've got your services on the back end, so you kind of got this almost like a client server like environment, it feels like. But it's really nice, because the more you deploy that's static, that's really a lot less that you have. It may not be a lot less, but it's less that you have to, less moving parts to manage. And there's maybe less vulnerability there. It's actually cheaper because you've got fewer things running in memory. And you kind of got that nice separation of concern between the front end folks and the back end folks, which can be very positive. Anyway, I'm just wondering if you've run into that. It doesn't seem like it's really hit the mainstream yet, and most of it seems more for like low code type folks who are trying to keep things cheap. But I'm just wondering.
Jamstack? Never really heard of it.
It's I think it's not really like you're paying customers yet, like the big enterprise folks. But I really do think it has a for those of you who are interested, go look it up. Just JAM Stack, and it's JavaScript, APIs, and Markdown, I think is what it stands for.
I do like Jam.
So. Yeah, I know it's a great name. Anyway, just throwing that out there. I think if I ever find somebody who's looking at DevOps for that, I think I'll bring them on as a speaker. It does seem like something that could become
I think we got a couple other questions.
Useful.
What would make you move from cron scripts? I mean, I'm not tied to them. I mean, it was just a quick and dirty thing. What I do feel strongly about is using the pull model for deploying rather than the push model. Once you reach any type of scale, I don't think that push is number one. I don't think you should have to manually deploy your software, and number two, the pull model has several advantages over pushes, which is like each client can detect whether or not it is fully completed, the transfer, and can retry if it needs to. They can stagger, etc. So, and I would happily use some freely available and easily modifiable pull-based deploy system if one existed. I don't know of any. If you know of any, I would love to hear. My thoughts about CD tool vendors, that's a very, very broad question. We use Circle CI. I like them a lot. Who are you thinking of? Who is a CD vendor that, like, I don't know what's in your mind when you're saying that. The other question is, when doing continuous CD, we can't scroll. There you go. When doing continuous CD, how do individuals coordinate features that depend upon each other? It's also a very broad question. But the point is small diffs, right? Small diffs. Keep them small, keep them quick. And then they talk to each other, right? Seems fairly straightforward.
Coordinated features that small diffs. Can you do like how about multiple people as a part of the deployment? Obviously you want to keep it small. Is there any trick to having more than one person, developer, as a part of the deployment?
You want each each deploy to contain a merge from just one engineer.
Yeah, I think he's talking about like if you got like a transactional system and you got to change both sides at one time, obviously.
You want those to be forward and backwards compatible.
Ah, okay.
Which is another thing that this is a point of discipline that you should be doing anyway, but this enforces you to do it, which is really, really, really good.
So is that idea, you kind of think about it as, let's say you're the server in that scenario, and you might add an API that supports both the original version and plus the new version.
Yes. Yeah, you do not want to do breaking changes. That's just a hygiene thing that is really important.
Looks like we have another question here from Callan.
When do you think we will reach a sufficiently shared understanding that we don't have to keep explaining to people the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment? When it becomes widely used, when it becomes as broadly understood and automatically used as continuous integration? How long that will take, I don't know. Depends on people like you.
So you got Circle CI there. They're doing both CI and CD, right? Because it's Circle CI, so you kind of think of them as just being the CI part, but they do the maybe they need to change the name. Have you seen any others out there just taking advantage of like just plain old I don't know, what are the Jenkins or whatever, are those guys still in favor out there? I'm blanking on their name.
Travis, we used to use Travis CI, and they were great until they got acquired and fired all of their good people. It's pretty terrible.
Oh, CloudBees, right? That's what I was thinking.
CloudBees is still around. Yeah, no, but all of them are really, I think of them as CI tools. I don't think of them as CD tools. I don't know. That doesn't mean that they aren't. That's all I know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then, and are you using but can you use Circle CI for, I guess I'm just asking because I don't know. Can you use Circle CI for CD? That's what I'm asking, or asked earlier?
Well, so the way we do it is, our CI, Circle CI, whenever there's a merge, it takes it builds it, runs all the tools, builds the artifact, and stuffs the artifact up into S3, right? And so then our nodes pull that down whenever they detect that there's a new one. So it's part of the CD process, but it the deployment process is pretty unique to each environment. So
oh, I see. Okay, and then somebody just threw out some examples of like Argo and Spinnaker and Tectonic.
Yeah, thank you.
Those have pulled out the assets and deploy them. Is that kind of how you would look at that?
Yeah. Okay. Spinnaker I've heard of. I haven't heard of.
Sorry, and I'm finally putting it all together. And you just have a script that does that. You just wrote your own thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now I got the whole picture.
Yes, you can expect multiple chapters on the CI/CD and observability engineering. Absolutely.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, folks, I'll tell you what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move on to the next slide. I'll do a little raffle for you. And and if you, yeah, go ahead and keep throwing ideas here in the chat window. And if somebody has a question, I'll stop and we can take the question. But we'll go ahead and move on to the raffle part of it. And looks like we still have most of you on, about 25 of you still on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my little tool here and just do a random number generator. So if I go to calculator.net, there is a random number generator. Actually, I tell you what, and well, let me go ahead and share my screen now. There you go. Maybe you can see that. And there's 25 of us, so I'll just put the upper limit of 25 and generate, and ta-da, number 7. So let me go back to stop share and share again. Here we go. Okay, so that was number 25. Let's go to our participants window, and I will count. I don't have to count all 25 because I can count the other direction. So 25, 24, 23, 22. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It was 7, right? Okay, there you go. 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, great. All right. Who's first last? I don't know who first last is. If first last, if you're listening, I don't know your name. You just typed in first last. I think you joined us last month too, I noticed. Okay, well, you win, but you got to tell us who you are. So I tell you what I'm going to do here. I think I actually will be able to have your contact information because anybody who signs up, I'll have that. So I'll reach out to you, whoever first last is. What do you think? What do you think, Charity? Should we go with first last because they didn't put on a name? Is that fine, or should we find someone else?
Do something that generates a name.
What's that?
Just do something that gets someone's name.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Unless you speak up real quick, first last, and tell us who you are. Nope. Nobody's done it yet. Okay, all right, we're picking another one. All right, I'm just gonna do it real quick without switching. So generate number 18. Was that Johnny? Can't tell.
Oh yeah, Johnny's just the person who just said he likes hearing me swear. +1 to giving it to Johnny.
Wait a second. I can't see. That might have been to you. Oh, that might have been from you. Charity Majors, 2 panelists, and you wrote "Love Johnny."
I gift it to Johnny.
Okay, we'll go with Johnny. All right, Johnny, we'll give it to you. All right, so that's that. One last thing is, if I go in here to play. So our next talk is on February 11th. We've got Dan Turchin, who's kind of a veteran in the field, and his new startup, Insight Finder, they're going to talk about how to use unsupervised machine learning to find anomalies in machine data. So please, I hope you'll join us for that. And Charity, I'd like to give you one last plug. Go check out Honeycomb. You know, they're really one of the first to promote and master the observability idea. and you should go check them out. And Charity
Yeah.
would always love to have you come back. And when you get your book, when that's done, let us know, and I'll send out a plug to the group.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, y'all.
All right, thanks a lot, Charity. Okay, bye everyone.